Okay, so again, you're going to make a group frequency distribution like we did up here. You're going to use the class mark or the midpoint to put along the x-axis and frequency along the y-axis. Make sure you have a title explaining what your graph is. I always tell people you need to pretend like you're going to publish this in a newspaper and nobody knows what you're talking about. So you need to make sure you're very clear with what you're showing. So that's why you have to have a title and labels on each axis as well as your numbers. All right. There's one more type of graph. I guess it's more of a chart than a graph. It's called a stem and leaf plot. Unfortunately, this is not the best data for a stem and leaf plot, but that's all right. So what you do for this is these are all 2-digit numbers, so that's good. If you had some 2-digit and some 1-digit, then what you would have to do is make 0 for, if you had the number 2, the number would actually be 0, 2 when you did this. All right, but usually you have all of the same number of digits. So what we have is our numbers start in the 40s and end in the 60s. So you're not going to have the same classes as you do over here for the stem and leaf plot. So this part here, the group frequency distribution, is only for the histogram and frequency polygon. The stem and leaf plot is determined by what your first digit is. So we have to go from a 40s all the way to the 60s. So you're going to have a 4, a 5, and a 6. All right, that's it. So that's why this one is going to be really, really long. So another reason you want these in order is because when you do the stem and leaf plot, they need to be in order. So we need to do all the 40s. So what you're looking at, we have a 42. So you put a 2 here, and then we have a 43. And then we have 2 46s. And then we have 2 47s, 1 48, and 2 49s. So that's all of our 40s. So what you're doing is you're condensing the data, but you still can tell what the actual data values are. So when you read this, again, you read it as 42, 43, 46, 46, so on and so forth. So instead of having to write the 4 in front of them, you're saying all of these numbers start with a 4. All right, so this is going to get really long because the 50s have a lot of them. All right, so we have 2 50s, so 0, 0, 4 51s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 52s, 5 54s, and 4 55s, and 3 56s, 4 57s, and finally a 58. So obviously a lot of them are in their 50s. Okay, and then the 60s, we have a 60, 3 61s, a 62, 2 64s, a 65, a 68, and a 69. All right, so there is all of your actual raw data, but instead of having to list it all out, it looks like that. And again, this data isn't very good since you only have 3 different numbers that you start with. So that's what a stem and leaf plot looks like. So again, we can see that way more than the other ones. The guys were in their 50s when they were inaugurated rather than the 40s or the 60s. So that's the stem and leaf plot. So that's really it for section 12.2. So if you want some practice, these are the ones you're going to want to work on. So page 470 or 745, 29 is what like we just did. We just did number 30, so this is 29 instead to work on that. And then 31, 33. So those are ones where the graphs are already drawn for you and you have to answer questions about the graphs, like how many total data values were there, that sort of thing. One thing it will ask you about is the modal class. Actually, I'm going to talk about this on the other paper. So it's going to ask for the modal class. If you're looking at the histogram or the frequency polygon, you can see that this one is higher than all of the rest of them. So whichever one has the highest frequency, that is your modal class. So your answer would be 54 to 59. Okay, that would be your answer. If I ask the question from this data, what's your modal class? The answer is 54 to 59 because they have 17, which is obviously the most compared to all the rest of them. Okay, so anyway, 29 is like what we just did, where you have to group the data, draw all three of the graphs or charts, whatever you want to call them. 31 and 33, the charts are already given to you, and you need to answer questions about it. And then 35 is a pie graph. So you're going to want to be able to do that. It gives you percentages and asks you to find the total amount and things like that. So those 4 problems you need to know how to do from section 12.2.